Endless Summer Quarterly. Yeah, I'm thinking a full cover page, subscribe to Betamax Blocker, and info about me, and then hello. Guess I'm not getting in the fan magazine this year. We're going to kick off our Beach Boys Greatest Hits retrospective by taking a look at the very first hits package, Best of the Beach Boys, Volume 1 from 1966. When we think 1966 for the Beach Boys, the big LP for that year is, of course, their ever-popular classic, Pet Sounds, one that everybody knows and loves. But when Pet Sounds was released in the spring of 1966, it was met with confusion. And despite making the top 10, Capitol Records wasn't really feeling that it was going to be the next big Beach Boys statement. Did not perform up to their expectations, and famously, Keith Moon of all people gave it a scathing review, noting how it wasn't a real Beach Boys album. I don't know. So Capitol was looking for a way to sort of recoup their losses a little bit, or push something out there that would be an even bigger success. Something that was catching on in the mid-60s were hits packages, oldies hits packages, groups that were popular in the beginning of the decade that might be waning by the middle or end of it, would have a nice hits package pushed out. All those classics compiled onto one CD. I highly recommend checking out Steve Lewis with the Beach Boys Basement. He does a video that talks about some of the artists that got this treatment. So, the Beach Boys got it too. Summer of 1966. Best of the Beach Boys. This album was a very big hit. Indeed, it is more successful than Pet Sounds, something that a lot of Beach Boys fans have a very difficult time accepting and dealing with. This has gone double platinum compared to Pet Sounds, single platinum, and this had a higher chart position, peaking about number 8. So not much higher, but a little higher. So the back of the sleeve claims that the Beach Boys personally chose each of the songs on this LP. That claim has been disputed even by Brian Wilson. They might have had some input, but I doubt they picked all 12 of these songs all by themselves. So, let's take a look first at the track list. I'll hold up my other copy here. We'll talk about the difference between these two copies in a moment. Side 1, Surfin' USA, Catch a Wave, Surfer Girl, Little Deuce Coupe, In My Room, and Little Honda. Side B, Fun Fun Fun, Warmth of the Sun, Louie Louie, Kiss Me Baby, You're So Good to Me, and Wendy. Should have said side 2, not side B. These titles at the bottom are not in the same order as on the record. Also, this album is in chronological order with the exception of Wendy, which for some reason is moved to the end. Not sure why that was done, because everything else is basically the same. So, by 1966, the Beach Boys already had at least a dozen top 10 singles. And they could have just stuck all those on a record, filled it up, and been done with this. The absolute best of the Beach Boys up to that point. But Capitol opted not to do that, and instead we get kind of an interesting combination package of a lot of different things. If you look at the albums represented, the Beach Boys had a dozen LPs by the time this came out, but surprisingly this is pretty limited. If you look at these tracks here, we have 4 of them from the Surfer Girl LP, and 3 of them from the Shutdown Volume 2 LP. So 2 albums make up over half of this one. So it's not a very diverse package. All Summer Long has 2, and then Surfin' USA, Today, and Summer Days and Summer Nights each contribute a single track. So there are several albums that are not mentioned at all, notably Surfin' Safari. Now their first LP, you'd think that would be on there. There are 3 very obvious choices here. 3 top 10 charting singles. Surfin' USA, Surfer Girl, and Fun Fun Fun. All of which we'll be talking about many more times before this is over. Then we have a weird push for B-sides. This is probably the biggest thing about this album, is the number of B-sides there are. The only complete single that is covered is Surfer Girl and its B-side Little Deuce Coupe. So here's a Surfer Girl 45 for you. And we have the B-side, Little Deuce Coupe, and both of them are on this LP. Despite being a B-side, Little Deuce Coupe has definitely caught on and developed a fan base of its own, and it peaked at number 15 or so, so it did pretty good. But we don't have Be True to Your School, but we have its B-side, In My Room. But In My Room did quite respectably too, and it made at least the top 25 on the charts. And it was part of their live set, so that one makes sense. But now we get into ones that are a little more obscure. There's no Dance, 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 but there is The Warmth of the Sun. The Warmth of the Sun is a big fan favorite today, but it never charted, and I don't think it was one they did in their live set either. So it was one that was kind of an odd choice. Wasn't quite the most conventional. Help Me Rhonda was a big #1 single, but we don't have it here. We have its non-charting B-side, Kiss Me Baby. Again, like The Warmth of the Sun, this one's a big fan favorite today. It's on a lot of collections, they do it live, but it didn't really catch on in the 60s. Never charted, and it's just kind of an odd choice for this set. And the last of our B-side buddies for today, our busy little B-sides, we don't have Sloop John B, which would have been one of their most recent hits when this came out, but we do have You're So Good to Me, which was used as the B-side. You're So Good to Me was done live at this point. You can hear versions of it on the Graduation Day Live 1966 set. So that one I could maybe get a little more than The Warmth of the Sun or Kiss Me Baby in terms of it being popular and known among fans. So, but still, a lot of B-sides. Kind of interesting too. Alright, then we gotta talk about the elephant in the room. It is an elephant that goes doop 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 Louie Louie. Their cover of Louie Louie. So Louie Louie is a song I think that's just very popular amongst kids. A lot of artists covered it in the early 60s. The Kingsmen probably best remembered today. Jan and Dean did it live on their album Command Performance. And I think the only reason they did it was because they knew it would get the kids happy and wound up and jumping and dancing around. Louie Louie was also popular amongst kids because it was the subject of an FBI investigation for obscenity. The idea being that if you couldn't understand what the song was saying, it must be profane. Sort of a weird precursor to the Satanic Panic of the 80s, I think. The Beach Boys also did Louie Louie as part of their live set. If you can bring yourself to listen to what I consider the worst album, compilation, collection, whatever you want to call it, in their discography, live in Chicago, 1965, the digital set, you can hear them do Louie Louie several times over. The kids really like it, so it's not a great song. The Beach Boys don't really do a lot with it. And it's odd because if they'd wanted to include a cover, as most Beach Boys compilations do, they would have been further ahead picking one of their very successful charting covers, like Barbara Ann or Do You Want to Dance. Louie Louie was never issued as a single. I think it's only here because it was popular with kids, it was kind of edgy and their parents hated it, so they knew it was going to be successful, and the Beach Boys did it live. It's definitely the black sheep of this album. Every review you see is going to mention its inclusion. I don't know, I think there's logic there, but it's still a very strange choice. The other one that I find to be a strange choice is Catch a Wave. You might say, well, how can that be? Catch a Wave is a classic. By today's standards it is, but if you put on 1966 glasses, Catch a Wave was released solely as an album track. It was not a single, it was not done live. Its inclusion here, I don't doubt, was to capitalize, again with Jan and Dean, on Jan and Dean's very successful Sidewalk Surfin', which rewrote the lyrics to be about skateboarding, with such mellifluous things as, bust your buns now. I don't know. But it was a big hit, almost breaking the top 20. Jan and Dean did that one live too. Dean Torrance continues to do that one live. And so I'm thinking Catch a Wave was included on this set to remind people, hey, you know that silly skateboarding song about falling and hurting your rear end? Yeah, that was a surfing song by the Beach Boys first, so listen to that one instead. I don't know, could be. This is kind of my fan theory. The other two tracks on here, Little Honda and Wendy, were from the Beach Boys EP 4 by the Beach Boys, which was sort of a sampler for the All Summer Long album. I have a video about that. Both of them eventually charted, and the EP did reasonably well by EP standards, excuse me. So, I don't know. Their inclusion is welcome, and both were live tracks too, so that kind of makes sense. Alright. This record here, it says Duophonic at the top, and this one here, in that top bar, stereo. So, these Duophonic, for those of you who don't know, I guess I should explain that first. Duophonic was the fake stereo that Capitol was peddling at the time. Taking mono tracks and kind of remixing them so they sounded stereo-like. Here's this record. It does say Duophonic on it. Got the Capitol rainbow. Pretty cool. Unfortunately, as I buy a lot of records used and secondhand at various stores and antique malls and places like that, you don't always get the right thing. So I just showed you a Duophonic rainbow copy of this LP. But guess what? My other record is Duophonic as well, except instead of Capitol Rainbow, we have Starline Brown, which honestly looks pretty cool. I don't have a ton of Starline Beach Boys records. You can still see the Capitol logo on there too. So I only have this record on vinyl in Duophonic, unfortunately. I listened to the Duophonic recordings before I made this video. They're not terrible. The Wikipedia page says most of the songs are still in stereo, and I can believe that because some of the songs like Surfin' USA and some of the later ones from the 60s, I didn't really notice a big difference. If I can get this record back in here. There it goes. Some of them though, like Catch a Wave and Little Honda and Surfer Girl, sounded kind of hollow. Granted, I just put them on my Victrola and played them through the regular speakers. I'm sure if I used headphones or something, it could have been a different experience. But the point of this all is, you know, Duophonic is weird, for one. We all know that. But if you find a Duophonic copy and you buy it and listen to it, it's not going to hurt you. It's not a terrible experience. Does it sound great by today's standards? Not really, but it's interesting enough, and all the songs are still listenable, so don't panic about that. So Best of the Beach Boys was very successful, and like I said, we got, by the early 90s, was double platinum, number 8 on the charts, pretty good stuff. There are fan conspiracies that this album was pushed in place of Pet Sounds, like if you ordered Pet Sounds for your record shop, you'd get this instead, or you couldn't order certain records without also stocking this, and so on. I don't know how true those things are, but this record was popular enough to go from format to format. Here is an 8-track tape. Pretty cool. I talk a lot about Beach Boys 8 tracks. Here's a really nice cassette copy, and this one is I really like because it still has sticker labels on it. We don't have ink labels yet, so pretty cool there. And it's got the very weird kind of olive green on there, which I kind of like. A very no frills package. Oops, if I can get it back in there. Okay. We also have to cover, there it goes, something that's kind of unique to this one. The first few albums we're going to talk about in this retrospective series did not make it all the way to CD. This release did. This is the CD copy from 1988. The first thing to note about this, if you watch my Beach Boys unofficial albums, you know I tease the booklets and the leaflets that come with these, but this is the best one of all. Look at those liner notes. Aren't they beautiful? So much stuff. These beautiful detailed liner notes. Look at those. Oh my, aren't those wonderful? Here's the back for you. Most of the early Beach Boys collections didn't get released to CD, and that actually makes a lot of sense because by the time this CD came out in the late 80s, there were already much bigger, much better collections. We'll be talking about these later in the retrospective. So just, you know, a simple 12 tracks with only really a handful of conventional hits probably wasn't really what people would be looking for. At least not long after this. This did really well on CD, and indeed it was the CD release that pushed it up to double platinum. We also need to talk about this. In the early 90s, most Beach Boys albums were released on what were called the twofers. You got 2 full LPs of material on 1 CD, plus bonus tracks, unreleased songs, alternate takes, non-album singles, all kinds of stuff. It was a good way to build your Beach Boys library very quickly. Best of the Beach Boys was not included in those 2-for reissues. So this is its only CD release, this single job from the 1980s, or late 1980s. I guess they figured, like I just said, it was probably obsolete enough. They could have paired it with the Christmas album or with one of its sequels, or with something that never got a CD release, like Beach Boys Rarities, but nope, they opted to just leave it there. So despite being double platinum plus, it's not in print anymore. I don't think it's available for download anywhere either. Might want to double check that though. Could be on some music app that I don't know anything about. Last job for today. We're not going to talk too much about releases from the UK and Europe, or continental Europe, and Japan, places like that, but we are going to take a look at the British version here, briefly. You can notice the UK version has more songs on it. It's 14 instead of 12, and much more in terms of conventional hits, and you can read all those titles there. This is a really nice LP, and honestly, when people say the Beach Boys' career is front-loaded with hits, they're not kidding, because this could pass for a collection released 20, 30, 40, 50, even 55 years later. They really haven't changed that much. It's a wonderful release in mono or in stereo, and it's in full chronological order too, something a lot of the British and European releases would do that the US releases generally don't. So that's really nice as well. The Beach Boys discography didn't really change much from the UK to America and back again. It's not like the Beatles where there are different albums based on what territory you're in. But it's nice to see this because the hits packages were done differently. And they'll get more diverse as time went on. But this is a really nice set, and kind of maybe what the American version should have been. But the American version played it pretty conservatively, pretty close to the hilt, going with a lot of more obscure stuff. They probably weren't really sure what to push. You can't just dump all the hits on there because you want a sequel, so you can't use up everything. You gotta save a few. I don't know. So in the end, it's an interesting curio. It's neat to see where it all started. Today, is it really relevant? Not particularly. Much bigger, better packages are available, but it's an interesting part of Beach Boys history, and one of their earliest albums to be beyond double platinum, so that's pretty cool too. Hope you enjoyed part 1. Join us for part 2 to see if lightning can indeed strike twice in the same place. Thanks for watching.